everybody. I'm Connie Joe with Soul Navigation, and today I want to talk about the milestones in astrology, the times of growth and challenge. And we all go through the same milestones. Now, some of us choose a different path. Not everyone has, for say, Pluto conjunct their moon or their sun, that transit. Or we may not always have Uranus conjuncting Venus as one of our transits, but we all go through certain transits like the Saturn return. You may have heard of the Saturn return. And if you haven't heard of the Saturn return and you're new to astrology, you probably have heard of the midlife crisis. And there are certain milestones in astrology that go along with that too. So why are these so important? It's because sometimes when we know that a challenging time period is coming, or we're going through something that's really difficult, hard, or challenging, and there's an astrological reason for it. You can see with your eyes your chart and the transits going on at the time. And there's like an explanation. You see the reason that you may be going through some of the things you're going through. Sometimes it makes it just a little bit easier. So we're going to go through all of these transits starting at age 7 right now. So at the age of 7, this is when we have the first Saturn square. So this is when transiting Saturn comes around and makes a 90-degree aspect or a square to our natal Saturn. And this is the start of the challenges, the growth. This is the start of the milestones in astrology, because this Saturn square introduces us to the pattern of Saturn at that time, where we might feel like there's roadblocks. For the first time, we're getting a little bit of taste of independence. We're feeling separate from our parents, maybe for the first time, going to school, making our own friends, realizing that we're separate from our family, from our parents. It's the first time that we might actually understand responsibility just a little bit. It's the Saturn introduction. And all of the Saturn milestones that we go through are difficult somehow. Saturn is a fated planet. It's father time. Saturn is the planet of restrictions. But as we grow older, Saturn does give rewards if we follow Saturn's rules, of course. So it's like the parent a bit, where we're focused with Saturn on doing the right thing. And this starts at age 7 with that Saturn square, where we first get a little introduction to rules, regulations, responsibility. So when we reach the ages of 18 through 19, we go through our first nodal return. So in our charts, we have the lunar nodes, the south node and the north node. They look like horseshoes. One is upright, one's upside down. And everyone has those in different signs. But when the transiting nodes come and they make a conjunction with our natal nodes, this is called the nodal return. And 18 begins the first of the nodal returns that we have in our lifetime. So what do the nodes signify? What do they mean? Their destiny, they're our purpose, their fate. The north node, what we're really striving for in this lifetime. The south node, we come into this world with the mentality of the south node. It's easy, it's comfortable, it's what we know, it's what we already do well. So it's a lot easier to stay in that south node than it is to begin that trek toward the north node, which is not necessarily comfortable. When this transit happens, and it lasts about 2 years, as the nodes travel through that sign, you may feel the effects of this nodal return when you truly feel called to go toward that north node. Think about where you were at 18 and 19. Some of us had graduated high school. we're making a big decision. Do we go to tech school? Do we go to college? Do we do neither? Do we live at home? Do we live away from home? All of these decisions. And really, the nodal return calls us to step out of our comfort zone for the first time, and maybe not for the first time, but to go toward that north node. So this is the first nodal return between the ages of 18 and 19. So all of you young parents that have children around age 7, you realize they're going through their Saturn square. Or if you have children that are getting close to graduating high school, 18 and 19, they're going through this first nodal return. And this, you can help them make those decisions by maybe leading them into the path that's a little less comfortable, that maybe the North Node calls us, but it's not easy to reach. So let's go on to the next one. So the next true milestone that we reach astrologically is the Saturn return. And many of you may have heard of the Saturn return. It happens between the ages of 27 and 31. Basically, the entire time that transiting Saturn is in the sign of your natal Saturn, because Saturn moves slowly, and as it makes the first pass over your natal Saturn, it will turn retrograde, go back, hit it again, and then come back and hit it a third time. So this transit or this milestone or challenge actually lasts around 2 to 3 years. So again, Saturn, that planet of karma, responsibility, time. At this time, at this age of around 28, we're about to turn 30 years old. And this can be how we're thinking. Oh my goodness, I'm about to turn 30. I'm not married. I haven't finished school. I'm still in college. I haven't even decided a profession. I want kids. I haven't even met someone yet. All of these thoughts go through your mind because 30 years old to someone that's been in their 20s can sound old. And of course, as we get older, we realize that it's very young still. But when you're in your 20s and you're about to turn 30 years old, that can be a startling revelation that, oh my gosh, I had all of these things I wanted to do, and none of them are done yet. I haven't done anything that I was supposed to do. It's almost fearful, the first Saturn return. It can bring a bit of fear. It can bring that feeling, weighty feeling of responsibility that you need to get things done. And it can be a bit paralyzing because you don't know exactly what to do. You need to do something. And a lot of times there's roadblocks and delays along the way. Saturn brings roadblocks and delays, but it's for a purpose. It's to help us grow and understand that doing our Saturn is actually responsibility, it's growth, it's making our way in the world as adults. And at the age of 28, it usually starts between 27 and 28. This can feel difficult for some of us. And I have to say, the Saturn return is harder for some than for others. Some people just breeze through it, no problem. But possibly Saturn isn't a heavy hitter in their chart. We all have planets in our chart that tend to be heavy hitters. The ones that really cause us the most challenge or cause us the most difficulty. So if Saturn is a heavy hitter in your chart, this first Saturn return can be rather difficult, and it lasts till we turn almost 30. And then Saturn moves on to the next sign and gives us a bit of a break until our next milestone. So the next challenge or milestone is the Pluto square. And this is when Pluto comes and makes a 90-degree angle or a square to our natal Pluto. Now, Pluto is a generational planet. Everyone that was born probably the same year or around that you were, they have their Pluto around that space too. So the people that you're around the same age with go through their Pluto square around the same time you do. So this happens between the age of 37 and 43. Now, I know that's a long time period, but Pluto travels very slow. So again, Pluto makes the forward pass the first time squaring your natal Saturn. And then it goes back and retrogrades and hits it again. And then there's the third time. So this transit can last around 4 years. Like I said, between 37 and 43 years old. It can be somewhat of a midlife crisis, although there's other aspects that I consider maybe a little bit more difficult, but that's me. Maybe Pluto wasn't the most difficult planet in my chart. The Pluto square works a little bit like this. Pluto deals with issues of power, control, transformation, jealousy, all of these things. So think about where your natal Pluto is and then what the square would be. So the houses that Pluto's transiting, and remember, Pluto stays in a sign for sometimes 20 years, but that doesn't mean it's a 20-year transit, mostly just when it's within a couple degrees of your natal Pluto. The square from whatever house it's in, going to squaring up to your natal Pluto, these are the houses or where the action might be happening, where you might be experiencing jealousy, control issues, power plays. A lot of times, if these are our work houses, these are power plays at work. Or if they're houses like the fourth house, maybe there's power plays, jealousy, a transformation that needs to happen at home. If the Pluto square involves the seventh house, this could be a transit about our committed partnership, where there might be control, jealousy, issues of transformation in that relationship. Or just for instance, the fifth house. This could be a challenge to your creativity, or it could be about your children and power plays or transformational issues in that area. So it's different for everybody how the Pluto square plays out, but it's not an easy time period. For most of us at that time, we're really experiencing this need to grow, to transform, to grow out of some of these Pluto issues. But Pluto, it really does deal with issues of power. And so think about that. Where is your natal Pluto and where did the square come from if it's already happened? If it hasn't happened yet, look, so Pluto is about to go into Aquarius. So if you have your natal Pluto, let's say in Scorpio, this will be the time of your Pluto square. And you can just expect that it's not like the roadblocks of Saturn, but it's more like other people coming in and playing Pluto, transiting, and trying to bring a transformation in your life by showing you where you might be holding on or trying to control something, or you're jealous of something, where you need to maybe die a little bit to these old habits so you can rise like the phoenix into new patterns, new habits. A transformation can be made. So this is the Pluto square. Again, this is from ages 37 to 43. The ages will be a bit different for everyone, but this lasts around 2 to 3 years, and all of us go through. Often during the same time as this Pluto square is going on, we also have our Neptune square around ages from 40 to 42, lasting around 2 years. This is when Neptune makes a 90-degree angle or a square or a difficult aspect to our natal Neptune. So this is why these years from 40 to around 45 are known as the midlife crisis years, because they're years that these outer planets come in, and we're not finished yet, and they challenge us to live our best life. So with the Neptune square, this one's tough because it can bring fatigue, it can bring confusion, it can feel like there's no boundaries. It's you're floating on the sea and not knowing which way to go next. A lot of times people, they may end a relationship, they may change jobs. There's a lot of different things that can happen during this Neptune square from the ages of 40 to 42. But one thing I think that Neptune calls us to do at this time is set boundaries, because Neptune really has no boundaries. It's pretend you're in the ocean. There's no ships, no land, no buoy around anywhere. It's just waves and waves. And it can be confusing. You can lose your direction. And this is when Neptune is challenging us to find the right direction. What direction in our life do we want to go to now? Because remember, by the age of 40, for some of us, we may not even live another 40 years. So our life may be half over, so to speak. So Neptune is saying, which direction are you trying to go now? But you feel this confusion. You feel this, there's like you're trying to find your purpose. A lot of times, this is when we're trying to find our spiritual purpose during this Neptune square. Questions come up like, what am I really here to do? What's my purpose in life? Am I really just supposed to keep my house clean, take care of the kids, and go to work every day? If that is indeed what you do. But you may wonder, what is truly my purpose? What did I come here to do? What does the universe want from me? These are things that can happen during the Neptune square. And again, it's different for everyone. But for every one of us, I do think we question our purpose, our spiritual purpose in particular. And I think it also causes us to set boundaries. We may have gone through something or things where we didn't have clear or set boundaries. This could be with other people, this could be in a job, this could be in a relationship. It could go a lot of different ways. But so the Neptune square essentially really calls us to look at our spiritual purpose, what we're really called to do, and also to set good boundaries in our life. Okay, we're almost finished with the midlife crisis aspects. We're about to go to the last one now. If you'd like to learn more about these aspects or any aspects in your chart, if you want a compatibility reading or whatever you want, I would love to have a reading with you. And you can book a reading with me at soulnavigation.com, go to readers, or you can see the link in the notes below. The final midlife crisis aspect is the Uranus opposition. This is when transiting Uranus makes an opposition to our natal Uranus. And this is approximately a 2-year happening or transit, and it happens between the ages of 42 and 44. Think about, if you're old enough, where you were at or what was happening between the ages of 42 and 44. I must say, though, Uranus acts a little bit different than the Pluto and the Neptune aspects or milestones. So what happens with Uranus? Uranus is the planet of sudden. It's the planet of rebellion. It shakes things up. It's the planet of innovation. It's that moment or that happening when something happens that changes the trajectory of your life. This is the Uranus opposition. And of course, it's different for everyone. But Uranus will cause something to happen that it's almost like a lightning strike hitting, where you realize that you're not living your best life, that you're not living the life that you want to live. It's your life is probably at that point, unless you live to be 90 or 100, and I hope you do, but you realize that your life may be half over. And what am I doing? What am I doing with my life? This is the moment that can change everything. For instance, for me, this was the hardest of the midlife transits for me. Uranus came in, and someone that I cared about very much actually had to have open heart surgery that they almost died from. It was all very sudden. I must say, Uranus is very sudden. And it made me realize how short life is. It made me realize that the value of my life wasn't what I wanted it to be, that I really didn't want to live my life the way I was living it. And through this, I made that change because it was that sudden rebellious moment where I was like, I don't want to live like this anymore. This is what the Uranus opposition does. Sometimes marriages end, relationships end, jobs end. Sometimes we move away. Sometimes we make major changes within our friend groups or our families. Think about where is the Uranus in your chart. And of course, the opposition is directly across from it. So the transit will be directly across and opposite of your name. What houses are involved? Where is this happening in your chart? Because this will give you a clue, if you haven't reached that point yet, what it might entail, what might happen. And as I said before, it's different for everyone. Everyone goes through a different Uranus crisis, but usually it comes suddenly, and usually it brings a sudden realization that maybe you're not living the life you want to live, and it gives you an opportunity to make the changes. Now, not everybody has a hard time with these midlife crisis aspects, the Pluto square, the Neptune square, or the Uranus opposition. Everybody chooses a different life path. They may have other periods in their life that are harder for them. But the Uranus opposition, it could bring, maybe your parents are getting older at the time, and you need to make a change in your life where you can include care for your elder parents or something like that. Please leave me comments below and let me know if you've gone through these milestones, let me know what happened in your life. I'd really like to hear about it. What was your Saturn return, or your Uranus opposition, or your nodal return? Which one hit you the hardest? Which one was the least challenging for you? But I'd really like to know what happened to you personally. So our next milestone or transit is the Chiron return. So it takes Chiron approximately 50 years to circle the horoscope. So this is when transiting Chiron comes and makes a conjunction to our natal Chiron. And this usually only happens once in a lifetime. Unless you live to be over 100, then you would have a second Chiron return. But the Chiron, let me explain a little about Chiron. He is shaped like a key in your chart, and he's known as the wounded healer. So this is usually a wound or something that happens when we're younger. Meredith and I both have great videos on Chiron, but it's something that really doesn't go away. It's a wound, or it's an abandonment that we have always dealt with. When we have the Chiron return, it's a chance to have our final reckoning with that wound. It's a wound that may never completely heal, but it's also a place or a point in our chart where we can help other people, possibly with whatever malady Chiron brought to us, whether it was abuse, someone passing away, a physical wound even, abandonment, as I said, or maybe just being made to feel small or like you weren't good enough. These are all Chiron wounds. And at the time of the Chiron return, we start thinking about our legacy. What are we leaving behind? Do we want to continue to carry that Chiron wound that may still rest really heavy upon us? Or do we want to really try to finally deal with the things that caused the wound? And even if it never heals completely, we can still use this as like a launching pad to help others maybe face the same tribulations or trials that we did. So the Chiron return really has you starting to think about the legacy that you leave behind, also about the healing that you've gone through, and going back and possibly remembering or going over things, journaling about things to self heal the wounds that Chiron brought to us. So it's in a way is a final reckoning with Chiron. Maybe not the final reckoning, but really facing your Chiron issues and dealing with them, hopefully for a final time. That's the Chiron return between ages 50 and 51. It lasts a little over a year. And we're going to move on to our next one. And please. So that's the Chiron return, and let's move on to the next one. So I apologize, everybody. I just realized that I skipped one of the most important milestones, and that is our second nodal return that happens at age 36. And this is when truly we come to terms with our south node and our north node. And I think 36 is around the age that people really start going toward that north node, understanding what it's calling them to do, either by sign, by house, the aspects that are made to that north node. What are we truly being called to do? So at age 36, the nodes come and they again, like they did at 18, make a conjunction to our north node and our south node. And this is a point where we understand the south node, what we're used to, and maybe even understand the habits that may not be wonderful that come with the south node. And we start to go toward that north node. We make that shift toward that north node, toward our purpose, toward what we're supposed to do in this lifetime. And this can be a spiritual purpose, this can be a job. It really encompasses all of that. It's a very faded place in our chart. So as we go through this second nodal return, again, this may not be an easy time because sometimes it calls for a decision to be made of how to reach that north node. It may encompass, again, quitting a job, leaving a relationship, embracing new friends or new relationships to move you closer toward that north node. But the second nodal return at age 36 is really a big deal. And I can't believe I forgot about it because the next milestone that I wanted to talk about is actually the third nodal return, and that happens around age 54. So here are our nodal returns go like this: 18 years old, 36 years old, and 54 years old. By the time you have your third nodal return at 54, hopefully you're all used to that north node energy. You already feel like you're doing your north node, as some of us say, and that you have come to terms also with your south node. But I think the last nodal, it's not our last nodal return, but the one at the age 54 is really important because it can be that midlife change that we make that takes us, propels us forward toward that north node. And I think it's also when we really have an understanding of the south node as well and how to work with and use both of our nodes, because both nodes are important. Although the north node is more futuristic than the south node, it doesn't make the south node less important. So that's when we have our third nodal return at the age of 54. And for me, that was probably the one that was most important. That's when I totally turned my path toward astrology. Let me know what you've done with your third or your second nodal returns, how they pushed you forward more toward that north node. Leave a comment about it. For our final milestone, and for some of this won't be the final milestone, we will go on to reach many more, but this is the final one I'm going to talk about today. And that is the second Saturn return that happens from around the ages of 57 to 59 or 60. It's around a 2-year transit. And basically, it's like the first Saturn return, where the transit really lasts the entire time that Saturn is in your sign. This is when Saturn comes around again and makes a conjunction with your natal Saturn. I have to tell you, I thought the second Saturn return would be easy. I don't know. I thought I'd come to grips with Saturn, but it hasn't been easy, quite honestly. It really brings us delays, roadblocks, not the same as when we were 30 years old. It's different because the Saturn return, issues of retirement. What am I going to do in my old age? You realize if you haven't saved money or if you haven't saved enough, issues about growing older come up. Issues of not the legacy of Chiron and what you're going to leave behind, but with Saturn, it really is more about the concrete issues of really, do I have a will? What will I leave behind? What will I leave my children, my neighbors, my friends? If you don't have children, how will I spend my retirement years? You really start to come to terms with getting older. And it's lovely because today, even 70 is young, but you still start thinking about at the second Saturn return, the issues of age, healthcare. You really start thinking about all of these. It weighs heavy on you. So remember, Saturn is that practical, responsible, father time planet. And even when you're between the ages of 57 and 60, Saturn is not through with you yet, I promise. It really brings up these issues, even the issue of life and death, because by the time you have your second Saturn return, possibly your parents have passed away, or people that you love that are elderly have passed away. You may be dealing with problems and sickness in your own life. But the second Saturn return really calls us to think about what we want to do with the rest of our life. How do we want the end days of our life to look? How do we want our retirement to look? Do we want to keep working? Have we done all we want to do in our career? What do we want to do next? Or do we want to change it all together? So it can be a very frustrating return, a frustrating 2 years. It feels like that there's roadblocks and delays that Saturn always brings during this second Saturn return. If I told any of you that I thought the second Saturn return would be easier, forgive me, I was wrong. It's just very different than the first Saturn return. So that does it for the milestones in astrology. I hope everybody enjoyed this. And if you did, I would love to do a personal reading for you and look at the milestones in your life, what's coming up, what's ahead. And for now, bye from Florida.